Hello, my name is Rachel Benchluch, and today I'm going to be giving my presentation on Leonora Carrington and her contribution to surrealism in Latin America. So, to begin with, I wanted to kind of establish the beginnings of the movement and what the movement of surrealism stands for. So, though the surreal maintains its connection with the experienced material reality, it focuses more on the realm of the subconscious, with concepts initially introduced by Freud, psychoanalysis, and the dreamscape became of particular interest to this movement. What I found interesting while reading Surrealism in Latin America is when posing the question, what is surrealism anyways? French writer and journalist Andre Breton, his photo is up on the screen, would comment on the movement saying that it could not be defined as one particular social system, aesthetic formula, or theory. It is a movement that does not fear contradiction. Uh, this is a quote taken from his editorial after the first year the movement was established. Right here. This is the quote that I took a screenshot of on screen. Um, wherein surreal artists would create automatism work, meaning that they would relinquish themselves completely to their subconscious while drawing. The surrealist artist does not belong to a monolith, and equally so, it rejects the rigid boundaries established by the ideologies of nationalism, militarism, and capitalism. Surrealist art is not necessarily allegorical or symbolic, but rather is presented with an in-work dream logic. Latin American poets and artists would be part of the two-way flow from Europe to Latin America, the place where surrealism flourished. So, Leonora Carrington was born in Lancashire, England, to an upper-class family. Her youth was marked with a streak of rebelliousness, refusing to cooperate with the rules of Catholic school, where she was expelled from twice, and high society. She lived in a very strict environment. Uh, Ever since her youth, she had been fascinated with Celtic fairy tales, meaning that they were of Irish origin, and the works of fantasy writers such as Jonathan Swift or Lewis Carroll, who did Alice in Wonderland. Though originally from England, she would go on to be part of the Surrealist movement in Europe, and later she moved to Mexico City with other artists fleeing the Second World War. During this time, around her 20s, she was institutionalized in an asylum due to severely poor mental health. On the screen, the painting that I have chosen is titled Self-Portrait, and it is littered with figures of symbolic nature. Carrington's use of animals, both real and imagined, such as the unicorn, was a common theme in her work, something that I believe would attest to how she would incorporate both the fantastic and the mundane in her drawings. So, in Leonora Carrington's work, there is a synchronicity between the magical and the surreal. In her own life, she was always interested in the occult and the magical. Fairy tales and myths were a major influence in her work. On the left, there is a painting called And Then We Saw the Daughter of the Minotaur. In this painting, it becomes evident as even the title seems to invite the viewer to watch the continuation of the myth. In this painting, there is translucent clouds inside of a dreamy arabesque structure, a minotaur with tiny hands, two little boys, and a figure bathed in light floating with a tree on its head. I believe Leonora doesn't necessarily try to intellectualize the visual imagery that she presents, but rather it seems that she would want the viewer to take the painting as is, akin to the logic that is followed only in the realm of dreams. There is an element of storytelling immersion that is extremely detached from the rules of reality. Her fascination with the occult led her to create her own deck of tarot cards, and the one that I have chosen is the card that represents the devil. She was always interested in topics such as sacred Mayan texts, Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, and other esoteric things, which she carried over into her work. And you can see the devil tarot card on the right hand of the screen. So, during Leonora's time in New Mexico, she discovered a newfound appreciation for the domestic, particularly kitchens and the type of alchemical magic that they represent. On the bottom left, there's an inscription that states, The arm of the timepiece, when striking the hour, raises the head, revealing a nest of fresh eggs which hatch as time goes by. Personally, I believe that Leonora was attempting to capture the transformative process of time, as the bird lays the eggs, and the eggs hatch into birds, and thus the cycle begins anew. There is definitely a mythical element in this work. In the text, Ficción Extrema, there is a quote by anthropologist Edmund Carpenter that claims that native people easily adapted the notion of simultaneity in their work. For example, depictions of a figure who is like half man and half rabbit becomes both the man and the rabbit. They're not necessarily exclusive, they are one thing. So Leonora Carrington easily incorporated this sort of fused perspective in her work. And I believe that the kitchen clock is a peak example of this. To finish, I wanted to show more paintings that highlighted this hybrid nature of the occult, the magical and the surreal. A quote from Ficción Extrema that I thought fit very well was, "In her world, such ritual happened every day in the kitchen, not just in dream or automatic trance, but in reality. For Carrington, the tools needed for all aspects of surrealist work, at its most magical as well as its most practical, were situated in the furnace of her creative thought, the kitchen, out of which all her paintings, drawings, sculptures, tapestries, and stories emerged." And here on screen, to the left and to the right, there is Los Mayas, El Ancestro, and Birdbath. And these were my sources. I used mostly the Museum of Modern Art and the Met Museum. Thank you so much for listening to me.